Welcome back to Procrastinators Videos.
Still panicking? No worries.
We've already covered what the Constitution says about the presidency.
The next step is simple.
What the heck can the president even do?
The powers and responsibilities of the president.
It should be made clear from the start that there are formal and informal powers.
Formal powers are what the Constitution specifically states the president can do, in clear, understandable English, or I guess as understandable as it got back then.
I still hold to the idea that the Second Amendment can be read as the right to hang the arms of bears on your wall.
No.
Anyway, informal or implied powers are what can be, well, implied. You can assume based off of what the Constitution says that the president should probably have them. Maybe.
Now let's discuss the formal powers of the presidency.
Probably one of the most well-known is the veto power, which is a check on the legislative branch.
If the president decides that a bill really sucks, he can block it with a wave of his hand.
But if Congress decides that the bill really doesn't suck, it can still pass with a 2/3 majority in both houses. This rarely happens, but it has before.
Another formal power of the president is the appointment power.
The president can appoint ambassadors, cabinet officers, and federal judges as long as their choice is approved by a majority vote in the Senate.
The important one to remember here is federal judges, because the 9 judges that sit on the Supreme Court serve life terms.
In the end, a Supreme Court judge that the president appoints will likely have more influence on the country than the president himself.
Which is probably why FDR wanted to add like 8 judges to the Supreme Court, because liberal agenda.
The president also has the defined power of the pardon.
The president can forgive any crime against the United States, except in the case of impeachment.
And it makes sense that the president can't pardon themselves if they are impeached. That would essentially make being the president a get-out-of-jail-free card.
So right now, if you're Hillary Clinton, you're probably asking Obama to pardon you so that you don't have to go to jail for, killing people and mishandling classified information. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, informal powers!
Up first is the I'm the president and that gives me special abilities power.
Also known as the executive privilege. Essentially, the president can hide information from the public and from parts of the federal government if it is for the safety of the country.
Although that doesn't mean they can keep information away from prosecutors during a trial.
Nixon learned that the hard way.
Another case of something that would be considered a presidential superpower is the executive order.
Only the legislative branch can make laws, but the president can issue an executive order.
An executive order is kind of like a law, only it just lasts as long as the president's term. Executive orders instruct the bureaucracy on how to enforce standing legislation. Still gets rid of that pesky requirement to go through Congress, though.
The executive agreement is also an informal power that allows the president to bypass the Constitution.
Executive agreements are like treaties, except not. Treaties have to be approved by the Senate and are supposed to hold more power. Executive agreements are like weaker treaties that don't have to be approved by the Senate.
Technically, the president is the one responsible for setting up treaties. That's a formal power.
But they still have to go through the Senate, and sometimes it's just easier to go over their heads.
For example, President Obama's Iran nuclear deal is an executive agreement because he knew that McConnell and the Senate would never approve it if it were a formal treaty.
Isn't it great that all of these implied powers give the president ways to completely ignore the legislative branch?
Well, we're going to be cursing those powers starting on January 20th of next year.
You know what isn't boring about the president? Presidential hats!
Does the president actually get to wear cool hats?
No.
Well, let's discuss them anyway. Rapid-fire presidential hats.
Commander-in-Chief. The president is technically in charge of the military, except for declaring war.
Chief Executive. The president is in charge of the executive branch. What a shock.
Chief Diplomat. The president gets to go to Mongolia and shake their president's hand and act all diplomatic.
Chief of State. Essentially, the president has double duty. The president is a symbol that represents the nation and blah blah blah, and they have to do all the other stupid crap like appearing on talk shows and giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom while still running the country.
Chief Legislator. This one's a sketchy title. Technically, the president isn't in charge of making legislation, but the president can essentially use their popularity to overpower the legislative branch and make Congress do what they want if they're popular.
Unless you're Jimmy Carter, because he wasn't popular, because he was Jimmy Carter.
Party leader. Let's face it, this isn't a real responsibility of the president, because the president is not always the leader of their party.
Yeah, I mean, you think Donald frickin' Trump is the leader of the Republican Party? No.
So, we're going to pretend that party leader means that they put on a party hat and dance around the Oval Office.
And now with that image left to sizzle in your mind, that concludes our second installment of Procrastinators Videos.
We hope you enjoyed, and of course, good luck procrastinating.
Stan, are you president?